I think it's important every once in a while to kind of rediscover why you like a hobby. I'm notorious for oscillating between all my various hobbies, whether it's D&D, wargaming, painting, modeling, terrain building, making videos, trading card games, collecting Pokemon, that sort of thing. I think it's important to find like the center so that all of your hobbies are revolving around some central thing that makes you happy. And for me, that's collaborative storytelling. Like for instance, I've been making a silly Pokemon deck. It's based around Team Rocket's wheezing. It just fills the bench with a jillion wheezings and coughings. Normally in Pokemon, you're only allowed to have 4 of a type, but because this new Team Rocket set just came out, Destined Rivals, the new coughing and wheezing have Team Rocket in front of it, which technically means it's a different coughing and wheezing. So you can have 8 total of them out. But yeah, it's fun to kind of build silly decks like that, bring them to locals. I did that this week. Got a few wins here and there. It's pretty fun. But I think the joy of that is kind of spending time by yourself, doing something that you can share with others. And I find that that's kind of the joy of hobby to me, especially when I have to do so much stuff on my own, whether that's prepping a campaign, painting models, building terrain, or building a new Pokemon deck. I find joy in the doing of that, but I don't think I'd find enough joy doing it without the end result of being able to share it with other people. Because like building that wheezing deck is fun, but not so fun that if I didn't get the reaction of people looking at it and going like, what the heck, what's that? That I don't think I would do it. Because I think that that is what brings me joy. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about rediscovering your joy with a hobby, because I think that there are what I've come to kind of know within myself as hobby traps. There are things that like you can get really into that end up sucking the fun out of a hobby. Like with competitive Pokemon, for instance, when I'm prepping for like a regional, I think that's actually a really fun thing to do, because often I'm going to a regional with some friends, we get to make a whole thing out of it, test against each other, have like nights where we like practice playing in the 50-minute best of 3 format. That's a lot of fun. And doing that for short bursts while you're prepping, I think is a really good time. But after a regional, I always take a huge break from Pokemon. I can't do it, the competitive stuff, long term, because I have fun playing Pokemon in a bunch of different ways. I like collecting, I like building decks, I like playing in cube draft formats. If you don't know what a cube draft format, it's pretty fun. You get to like get a specific collection of cards that you or somebody else builds, and you draft decks from that and then kind of build decks based on what you get. That's always a lot of fun to just do in a night. And if it was only like competitive, I feel like I would like not have as much fun. But it's interesting because I think I harp on competitive games a lot. And I love competitive games. Like I love playing in standard formats. I think what happens to me is that I don't want that to be all the joy I get. I might end up like doing quite a few videos on this concept, but alternate formats for games I think are so interesting to me, because think about Pokemon, for example. You have years, like 20 years of cards, more now at this point, to choose from, but only like the last few years of cards are available in standard. I don't think that's a bad thing to have, but it leaves a lot of game on the cutting room floor. So you'll have alternate formats like Tricky Gym, Andrew Mahone's Gym Leader format, where you only get 1 card of each name except basic energy, and everyone has to be a specific type and make decks based on that. And I think that's really neat. It's been more embraced by the Pokemon Company recently. They made a version of it on the app, the TCG Live. So finding those alternate formats is really interesting. If you played Overwatch back in the day, this is a good example of one that had a lot of rogue formats. Like for instance, Lucio Ball or single elimination games, just different ways of playing outside the standard, like deliver the payload. When you have an engine of a game, there's just so much you can explore outside of like the direct competition. And I think getting too stuck into one thing can drain some of the fun out of it. And again, I really don't want to harp too much on competition, because I also think that there's the collecting aspect of Pokemon, for instance. Because of like the rise of Pokemon Pocket and scalping recently, making it really hard to get Pokemon products at MSRP. I think that that could drain the fun out of Pokemon for you. Because for instance, that Weezing deck I created, I was only able to make that deck because we were in Albertsons and I found a Pokemon vending machine and they had one box of Destined Rivals in there for sale. And I bought it because, you know, of course, you always want to pick up Pokemon at MSRP. And I found that Weezing in there, and that's what inspired the deck. And I don't think I would have even looked at that card if I didn't have the opportunity to open that box. And I think that's true of a lot of people. Like, if you're not into the Pokemon TCG and you're not looking at Limitless to find deck lists, how are you going to have fun playing Pokemon if you can't get product at a reasonable price? And that's a way the fun could get drained out of you. But the other side of that is because so much Pokemon product is being ripped, there's a lot of bulk that is just sitting there for free, basically, or for like pennies, which means you could grab a bunch of bulk or have somebody hand off their bulk from all the boxes that they opened, and you could create your own cube draft format from that. The problem with that is I feel like making a cube based on that requires a little bit of ball knowledge, essentially. So it's not really a beginner-friendly thing to do. And that's why it's a bummer to see like the prices rise on all of the basic Pokemon products. I don't really want to harp too much on that, but I think it's just a good example of fun being drained out of a hobby, because I don't really rip too much product anymore because of how difficult it is to get, and that used to be a really fun thing to do. But I've tried to refocus my energy away from, ripping packs open to kind of enter a more Marie Kondo decluttered hobby life. I'm trying to get rid of a lot of stuff I don't use anymore and try to make a lot of what I do have multi-purpose. So terrain, I want it to be used for all kinds of fantasy terrain. If I'm making a piece, I would like to use it in my war games and my D&D games. If I'm making a piece of sci-fi terrain, I wanted to use it in Star Wars Legion, and I would like to use it in any other sci-fi RPGs I'm doing. I'd like to take my old Pokemon bulk and get rid of most of it, but then make some cubes out of it and keep it in little ETB boxes. We moved recently, and the place is a bit smaller, so I've been forced to downsize a lot of my hobby stuff, and I think that's actually a good thing for me, because what it's done is it's made me look at what I have and find ways to make it multi-purpose, and then just get rid of stuff that I don't need or haven't used in a really long time. And when you're making things multi-purpose, you kind of want to use the same stuff for multiple games. And that's kind of driven my thoughts on what more can you do with what you have. The world's in a place where I think everyone's tightening their belts. Hobby stuff, board games are harder to come by at good prices. Prices all over the board are raising on necessities. And I think finding ways to take what you already have and make more out of it is, I think, the better way to approach your hobby at the moment, at least for me. And that's how I'm going to approach it at the moment. I think the days where people line their shelves with unplayed, unopened board games are coming to an end. I think that with, the tariff scare and everything that's sort of resulted from that, I think that people are just going to stop doing super explosive Kickstarters, or those aren't going to be as prevalent as they used to be in the 2010s era. But I want to quickly just go back to refinding the fun for yourself, because I think if you get too deep into the competitive scene of a game, eventually you're going to burn out of it, because it's just a lot of energy to keep up for something that's supposed to be very fun. Now, if you're competitive to the point where that's your job, I think you've already understood that the fun is gone, and that's fine. I think that is just what you've chosen to do, and you can enjoy something and have most of the fun be gone from it, I guess, because it's your job now. But I think that's what would keep me from ever trying to become super competitive in Pokemon. I don't think I would like to take the joy out of it from me, because I know that the joy would go away if I ever became super competitive at Pokemon. Same with any game. If I became super competitive at Star Wars Legion, I would probably stop having fun with it, because playing it would be about winning instead of the playing of it. you know? When I like talk about my favorite things playing Pokemon, often they revolve around, here's this silly deck I created that I brought to locals and went 4-0 with, and it was insanely lucky because I flipped heads on everything. And it's not that like, I went to locals with the most meta deck that I like prepped and went 4-0 because it's not like a good story. That's not the thing that like I will remember. It might feel good at the moment and you get some more packs out of it. But as somebody who's already trying to downsize, I don't really just need more Pokemon packs in my life, as fun as they are to open, because then it's just more bulk to sort at the end of the day. What's fun is just the actual playing of the thing. I'm in a period of rediscovery in my hobby, which I think has kind of lent itself to why I've been finding it hard to post. It didn't help that when we were prepping to move, I had to deconstruct my studio space inside the office, and have only just put it back together. So like, I think when you take a break off of creating, it kind of is hard to find the momentum to post again and the confidence to post again, which is why I'm kind of just, you know, doing this off the cuff here. I'll still probably do some scripted videos akin to like Fantasy Armies one, but I think just going off the dome a little bit more is more my style when it comes to creating YouTube content. I'm a yapper, so I can just riff and chat as long as I've got a few bullet points to chat about. And finding the confidence to do that is, I think, what's going to make YouTube sustainable for me in the future. That's kind of the main thing I wanted to chat about. Something I've been thinking about is rediscovering the joy. That's sort of where I'm at with it. So for Pokemon, that looks like finding rogue formats to play and creating cubes. Me and my friend Joe, we've been going on Tabletop Simulator, which is a 3D physics-based, you can play any board game you want thing on Steam. I highly recommend it. I've spent too many hours in there. But we've been doing this evolution series inspired by Azul and Chip Ritchie's Uncommon Energy thing, where they will open half a booster box and build decks out of that, and then open the next set's half a booster box and make decks out of that, adding to the card pool. And we've been doing that with old sets, and that's been a lot of fun. And cheap, because it's free on Tabletop Sim. And then for wargaming, that kind of looks like getting rid of, honestly, all of my Warhammer 40K stuff. I'm getting more and more interested in Star Wars Legion as a game and less interested in 40K. Here's the big one also for wargaming for me. I think that when people try to get each other into war games, and often that's Warhammer 40K, what they'll try to do is try to get them inspired about like an army and convince them to spend $400 building it. Like, oh, you'd love Sisters of Battle because they're nuns with guns, or you'd love Nurgle because they're Grossies, or you love Necrons because they're Terminators. But like, I think the sheer amount of money and time and effort you have to do to put into just get in the door on a game like that makes me not want to recommend it to anyone. Because I think when it comes to war games, I would prefer to put games on for people. But to do that, I kind of have to limit my scope. So for me, I think it would be Star Wars Legion, where I supply both sides minis. And I can't do that for every game. So if I am gonna ask you to play Star Wars Legion, I'm going to have both sides ready and painted for you. And I think that's just kind of how I would run any sort of game. Like if I'm asking you to play a board game, I obviously have the board game. If I'm asking you to play D&D, all you need is a piece of paper and a pencil, and I've got everything else. And you can bring more stuff, and it's always appreciated. Like, I like when people put effort into their characters and maybe draw their art or write their backstories and bring their own dice. But the bare minimum is just like the modicum of wanting to do it, not having to have all this stuff, you know? That's what I really want from people, is just the want to be a part of it and caring about their character and caring about the story, not having physical things or needing to spend any money. And that's also a big thing for me, is I think putting on games for people is where my heart is, and not trying to convince them to like, now you have to spend all this money putting together a Pokemon deck, or building an army and painting it, or even painting your own mini for D&D. I'm totally fine like grabbing a mini and painting it for you if you're joining my D&D campaign. It's not that huge of a deal. And I know that's a lot of effort, and it's not something I would suggest everyone needs to do, but it's something that works for me because I already like to do that in my free time. But yeah, I don't know how much of this is like me just reacting to the general economy of the world, but it feels like I'm in a healthier space mindset-wise than I was in my early 20s approaching hobby, where all I cared about was like, you know, getting the next box of minis and staying on top of the meta. And now it feels like I want to just create like experiences that I can bring to the table that are contained and easily stored and organized, that I can say, hey, I would like to put on this experience for you, whether that's a war game or a Pokemon card game or a role-playing game or a board game, and say, hey, this is something I'd like to share with you. Let's do it together. And I'm not saying that this is like a ubiquitous piece of advice that I would put on anyone or everyone. It's more something that I think I've realized about myself as I'm entering my 30s. I'm almost 30, turning that this September. I think it's about refocusing my hobby energy and my resources to stuff that I think is going to be more fun for me and my friends going forward. It's maybe me being a little bit anti-consumerism mindset. There's a little bit of Rage Against the Machine going in me right now for obvious reasons. So take it for what you will, honestly, and obviously do what makes sense for you where you are in the hobby. If it doesn't make sense for you to collect 2 armies in order to like put on games, that's fine. But there are skirmish level games available that it's not that hard to collect 2 sides of, not expensive. But I also know it's like, there's already a lot of effort put on GMs and role-playing games. And it is nice when other people are willing to invest their own resources into joining you on something. But for me, somebody who like has specific interests and skills and that sort of thing, and is always looking to bring more new people into the hobby, because I love my friends, but we are scattered to the wind. They're on all sides of the country. And so having to make new friends means often bringing in new people into the hobby, people that maybe are interested in D&D through like Baldur's Gate and stuff, but have never played, or interested in war games, but have never like tried them themselves because they're intimidating to get into. That means I need to put in like the work to create both sides. And as someone who's a huge Star Wars fan, that is a joy for me. I like collecting and painting both sides of armies. So for you, you'd probably want to just find something that you also found joy in, that wasn't an extra pain or puts more pressure on you as a DM or a GM. And that might just be, if you're like Pokemon cards, making a little cube for you and your friends. And maybe this advice just doesn't apply to you where you're at in your life. Maybe you are the kind of person where all you want is to create your deck or your army and show up to a local event where other people are already doing their part of the work and just playing against them in the standard formats. And there is, again, no problem with doing that. I think my reaction to this and why I'm talking about this is because I think that there's so much more game left on the table and ways to make things more multi-purpose if you are kind of morphing the experience yourself or using the resources that you have to hand to create new campaigns and game systems like cubes or your own little narrative campaigns in war games or RPGs. And I suppose this is sort of like my life update / hobby update about where I am in hobby and stuff. And I think this is my current view on what makes my hobby life joyful and sustainable. But I also know that I'm in a very specific place, and this is what makes sense for me and how much space I have in my life, both in terms of physical space and resources and proximity to friends. But honestly, I think everybody's gonna be in a different space. Let me know in the comments if you found what I said, if it struck a chord with you, if you think that, yeah, that kind of is where I'm at right now too, based on the way things are, or if you're more the kind of person that I just want to create my thing, show up to locals, play in standard, whether that's, I'm going to just jump into a Warhammer game that everybody knows the rules and we're all jumping into. I don't have time to like craft both sides of a game or create a Pokemon cube. I understand that that's a lot of solo effort to put in, but as somebody who exists as a forever GM, that's kind of something I do anyway. So I find joy in the solo moments as long as I can use them to create collaborative storytelling moments in the future. But not everybody's like that. And so I want to know in the comments if that's something that feels like it hits with you, or if it doesn't, and if this is just more of a me thing at the moment. But regardless, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you. If you remembered any of my stuff from the past and saw this video pop up in your feed and decided to watch it, that means a lot. I'm gonna hope to start posting more in the future. I'm feeling a little bit more confident in myself, a little bit more healthy and sustainable in my hobby stuff. And I think I've got a little bit more energy to be creating content like this in the future. But yeah, thanks again so much for watching. My name is DeHart. I'll see you next time.